Ma'am, were you crying when you were shooting him?
I don't remember.
Were you crying when you were stabbing him?
I don't remember.
How about when you cut his throat? Were you crying then?
And I got up off the floor and I grabbed the gun and I shot him.
But sorry doesn't cut it in my mind. That word is not enough and never will be enough for this loss. And I recognize that.
They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. From an obsessed lover who killed her boyfriend in a jealous rage over an affair, to a toxic girlfriend who decided that if she couldn't have her man, no one else would. Here are the craziest female killers reacting to insane sentences. Case number 1, Letecia Stauch.
Well, as we heard testimony to, his body was found 1,370 miles away. And then the process to identify his maggot-infested remains withheld him from us until July 2020.
It started as a missing child case. 11-year-old Gannon Stauch was nowhere to be found. His stepmother, Letecia Stauch, told police he had gone to a friend's house and never returned.
I guess me.
But what unfolded next was something far more sinister, a gruesome crime that exposed one of the most twisted minds the justice system had ever seen. On January 27, 2020, Letecia called 911 to report Gannon missing. She played the worried stepmother, claiming he had left to play outside and vanished.
Not an emergency. My phone says you all at 6 o'clock and it's almost 7. And we went to one friend's house and what he's going to do to friend's house and they said he wasn't there and the other one said he never came there. Well, I don't know when the other people calling out. Yeah, I called 911 and they said I had to call the snuffler because my wedding was going to come on the street. But we didn't. They were doing seven, but like we went to both the friend's house and they said he wasn't there.
Detectives soon spotted inconsistencies. Security footage from the home never showed Gannon leave the house. And Letecia's story didn't hold up. Her lies escalated. She claimed an intruder had kidnapped him. Then she said he'd had an accident. Eventually, evidence proved otherwise. Blood in Gannon's room, 18 stab wounds, a skull fracture, and a gunshot wound. She drugged him with hydrocodone before the attack. Afterwards, she stuffed his body in a suitcase, drove across states, and dumped it under a Florida bridge. Arrested on March 2, 2020, she kept up the charade until a worker found the suitcase weeks later. At trial, Letecia pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. She also flipped off witnesses during her trial.
It's come to our attention that during mostly the afternoon session of witnesses today, that the defendant has been flipping the bird potentially to witnesses or to our family that are here for Gannon.
Her lawyers argued she had dissociative identity disorder due to childhood trauma and claimed she wasn't aware of what she was doing. But the prosecution tore that defense apart. Letecia had searched for things like, I don't like my stepson. Can I find a rich guy? Can they trace Snapchat? And how to get blood out of carpet. She cleaned the crime scene, moved the body, lied to police, and fled across the country. Clear signs that she knew exactly what she was doing.
Next search on February 26, 2020.
7:30 a.m. Can I find a rich guy?
The next search on February 26, 2020.
8:10 a.m. Can they trace Snapchat?
The next search.
On May 8, 2023, the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to life without parole. Letecia sat there stone-faced. No tears, no emotion, just the cold stare of a woman who had orchestrated pure evil. And while Letecia killed her stepson simply because she despised him, this next case takes an even darker turn. Case number 2, Galen Morris.
She ran him over and sat in the car and got out while his body was underneath asking for her phone to call her mother. Andre couldn't call his.
It was the night of June 3rd, 2022, when Galen Morris, a 27-year-old woman from Indianapolis, drove to Tilly's Pub and Grill in Castleton. She was not there for a night out. She was hunting for her boyfriend, Andre Smith. Using an Apple AirTag she had secretly placed on his car, Morris had tracked his location, believing he was cheating on her. What happened next was a shocking act of revenge that left Smith dead in the pub's parking lot. Inside the bar, she spotted Smith with another woman, later identified as Kenya Brown. Enraged, she grabbed a beer bottle and attempted to attack Brown, but Smith intervened, preventing the assault. The commotion was so intense that the bar staff forced all three of them to leave. As Smith exited the bar, Morris was already outside, waiting in her blue Chevy Impala. Witnesses testified that she drove straight at him, hitting him with the vehicle. As he lay injured on the pavement, she backed up and ran over him again. And then, in an act of terrifying finality, she drove forward once more, her car dragging his body underneath. Smith was pronounced dead at the scene from traumatic asphyxia caused by being repeatedly run over. Morris did not flee. Witnesses saw her pacing near the crime scene as police arrived. She was immediately arrested and charged with murder. Morris's trial was filled with emotional testimony and debates over her intent. The prosecution argued premeditated via the AirTag. Her defense claimed sudden heat for a lesser charge. Convicted of voluntary manslaughter, she got 18 years instead of a possible 30.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a level 2 felony.
During sentencing, Andre Smith's mother, Letecia Sanders, condemned Morris, stating that her son did not deserve to die for cheating.
Son did not deserve to be murdered because of her seeing him with another woman, because she's been seeing him with other women. This has been going on. He was not married to her. He didn't owe her nothing. He don't share a kid with her.
Morris, in tears, apologized to Smith's family and daughter, saying she deeply regretted her actions.
I could turn back the hands of time, I would, and it would be handled differently, so differently. I'm praying for their strength, healing, and recovery. But once again, I'm so sorry to his family. I'm very sorry. I apologize.
Morris is currently serving her sentence in Indiana. But this is nothing compared to the remorseless and cold-blooded killer in this next case. Case number 3, Beverly McCollum.
It was a surface injury, sir.
So in reality, you didn't really strike him then?
No, in reality, I did strike him. Yes.
They called it the Jack-in-the-Box murder. But there was nothing playful about what happened to Robert Carabello. In May 2002, inside the basement of his Michigan home, his wife, Beverly McCollum, made sure he would never leave. She shoved him down the stairs, and before he could recover, a hammer came crashing down on his skull. Gasping for life, he had a plastic bag pulled over his head, suffocating him in the dark. His killers, McCollum, her daughter Deneen Ducharme, and Ducharme's friend Christopher McMillan. They stuffed his body into a metal trunk and drove more than an hour away, with McCollum's younger daughters in the van, in the middle of a blueberry field. They lit the trunk on fire, thinking they had erased all evidence. Later that month, a Michigan blueberry farmer discovered the metal footlocker containing charred human remains in his field. But the case went cold until 2015. DNA testing identified Carabello. McCollum fled internationally, while McMillan took a plea deal and Ducharme got a life sentence. It took nearly 2 decades, but in 2020, McCollum's run came to an end. She was found hiding at a hotel near Rome and extradited to Michigan 2 years later. In 2024, she finally stood trial. McMillan testified how McCollum orchestrated the entire murder. The prosecution argued that Carabello had wanted to leave behind a criminal lifestyle, but McCollum refused to let it go. The jury only needed 2 hours to find her guilty.
He died from old age. He didn't die from some disease. He died a cold-blooded, ruthless death.
And yet, as her daughter, Cicely, stood in court, delivering an emotional statement about the father she lost, McCollum barely showed any interest in the court proceedings as she remained emotionless. At times, she even dozed off, showing not a shred of remorse. On May 23rd, she was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison. The judge called her a threat to anyone who gets in her way, but it was her daughter, Cicely, who had the final word.
Her merciless actions stripped my father from a second chance and tore away loved ones from both sides. Justice must be served, not only for my father, but for those who have forever been changed by her ruthless actions.
And if you thought this was the most disturbing murder, wait until you see the lover-turned-killer in this next case. whose senseless murder and reaction afterwards will leave you speechless. Case 4, Jodi Arias.
Ma'am, were you crying when you were shooting him?
I don't remember.
Were you crying when you were stabbing him?
I don't remember.
How about when you cut his throat? Were you crying then?
I don't know.
On June 4, 2008, Jodi Arias visited her ex-boyfriend Travis Alexander in Mesa, Arizona. That night, she stabbed him 27 times, slit his throat, and shot him in the head. His body was found days later in his shower, a gruesome scene of blood and violence. Here are images of the crime scene. The trial of Jodi Arias was one of the most explosive in U.S. history. A brutal crime, a web of lies, and a courtroom spectacle that had the world watching.
You ever ejaculate on your face?
No.
I'm going to tie you to a tree and put it in your ass, by the way.
Oh my gosh. That is so debasing. I like it.
But what made it unforgettable? Jodi Arias herself. Her shifting stories, eerie confidence, and chilling reaction to her sentence. At first, she denied being there.
You killed Travis Alexander.
I absolutely did not kill Travis Alexander. I had nothing to do with his murder. I didn't harm him in any way.
Then she claimed masked intruders killed him.
Witnessed Travis being attacked by 2 other individuals.
Who?
I don't know who they were. I couldn't pick them out in a police lineup.
So what happened?
They came into his home and attacked us both.
Finally, she admitted to the murder but said it was self-defense. When the prosecution flashed a crime scene photo of Travis's bloodied body, she broke down in tears, covering her face and shaking. The jurors weren't convinced her tears were real.
Is that right?
Yes. Okay.
Well, no, I don't
count them. I don't know. I'll just take your word for it.
Would you like to take a look at the photograph?
No.
So if he is being stabbed in the back.
Prosecutor Juan Martinez tore through her lies. He painted a picture of a jealous, obsessive ex-girlfriend who couldn't handle rejection. The evidence backed him up. Photos from Travis's own camera showed him alive in the shower minutes before his death, and another captured his bloody body seconds later. Even worse, Jodi's bloody palm print and hair were found at the crime scene. Jodi Arias once claimed she'd rather receive the death penalty than life in prison. But when faced with the possibility, she changed her tune, begging for life behind bars instead.
My life in prison. It'll either be shortened or not. If it's shortened, the people who will hurt the most are my family. My hair was past my waist, and I donated it to Locks of Love, the nonprofit which creates wigs for cancer patients who've lost their hair. If I'm allowed to live in prison, I will continue to donate to that organization for the rest of my life.
The jury was deadlocked on the death penalty, so the judge sentenced her to life without parole. Her reaction? No tears, no shock. Instead, a smirk, as if she still had control. Now she sits in Perryville Prison in Arizona, appealing her conviction, but with no way out. And if Jodi Arias' case left you speechless, then this next female killer, who thought she was calling the shots only to realize she had been played all along, will leave you even more dumbfounded. Case 5, Dalia DiPolito.
Is your husband Michael? Okay, I'm sorry to tell you, ma'am, he's been killed. He's been killed, man. I'm sorry. Listen.
No. In 2009, Dalia, former escort from Boynton Beach, Florida, had been married to Michael for just 6 months. But instead of enjoying newlywed bliss, she was already scheming to get rid of him. She turned to her secret lover, Mohammed Shiadeh, asking him to help her find a hitman. But instead of playing along, Mohammed went straight to the police. And that's when officers decided to flip the script on her. They staged an undercover sting, introducing Dalia to a hitman who, behind the mask, was actually an undercover cop who got everything he needed straight from her lips. Money, instructions, her husband's schedule, and when he asked if she was sure, she responded with, "I'm 5,000% sure."
Already. I'm positive, like 5,000% sure.
With that, police had all the evidence they needed. On August 5, 2009, while Dalia was at the gym, police swarmed the DiPolito home. They staged a fake crime scene at her home, complete with cops' TV cameras. When Delia arrived, an officer told her Michael was dead.
Police station. I can't let you see him, man. We have to do our job. If you want us to find his killer, okay, we need you to calm down. I'm going to need you to go with these detectives, okay?
She sobbed convincingly until interrogation, when they revealed Michael was alive and she was caught.
Well and alive.
Thank God.
Oh, yeah, thank God.
Can I see
No,
him?
he doesn't want to see you.
I so wanted to see him.
He doesn't want to see you. You better quit your plan.
When our case went to trial, prosecutors shredded her defense. The videos, the phone calls, the money, everything pointed to her guilt. Delia's lawyers argued she never meant to go through with it, claiming it was part of some elaborate reality TV stunt. But no one was buying it.
Something you guys are going to put online so that you can get publicity.
On social media, yeah.
On social media.
Right. So we can try to get an acting job.
The jury took just 3 hours to reach a verdict, convicting her of solicitation of murder and sentencing her to 20 years in prison. She appealed the decision, which led to a retrial. However, the second trial ended in a deadlock, forcing yet another attempt in court. In her third trial, the prosecution once again presented overwhelming evidence, and this time she was convicted and sentenced to 16 years behind bars. And just like that, the woman who thought she could mastermind the perfect crime became the star of a real-life crime story, but not in the way she wanted. And as for her husband, Michael, he walked away with his life, but same can't be said for the lover who turned victim to his girlfriend's love plot twist. Case number 6, Ezra McCandless.
Everywhere I could. I didn't know what was happening. I just needed to get away. I just needed to get out of the car.
On March 22, 2018, a bloodied young woman stumbled through the woods and knocked on a stranger's door. Shaken, barefoot, and covered in scratches, she told the homeowner a chilling story. She had been attacked and barely escaped with her life. Alarmed, the man called 911.
This is Don Sipple calling, and I have a young lady that just came to my house, and somebody attacked her, and she needs a doctor. Her clothes are all torn, and...
Paramedics arrived to find her clothes stained with blood, her arms trembling. But as investigators would soon uncover, the real story was far more sinister. Ezra McCandless wasn't the victim. She was the killer. At just 22 years old, McCandless would soon become known as the killer girlfriend, a woman whose actions blurred the lines between obsession, manipulation, and murder. It all began with Alex Woodworth, a 24-year-old philosophy student and barista. He was bright, thoughtful, and had a complicated relationship with McCandless. Their connection was messy, as she had been in an on-again, off-again relationship with another man, Jason Mingle, whom she desperately wanted back. Woodworth, caught in the middle, had once been her confidant, but now was something else. Days before, she visited Mingle's coffee shop, appearing agitated, then went to Woodworth's home under a pretext. Mingle, suspicious, found her car there, engine running, and later voiced concerns to police after interrupting their talk. It was the last time he saw Woodworth alive. On March 22, 2018, she convinced Woodworth to go for a drive with her. They ended up in a remote area in Springbrook, Wisconsin, a place isolated enough that no one would hear what happened next. What happened was brutal. McCandless stabbed Woodworth 16 times, deep. Violent wounds to his head, neck, groin, and torso. His body was found slumped over the back of her car, which had gotten stuck in the mud near the crime scene. When first responders arrived, McCandless wove a story that made her sound like the victim. She claimed that Woodworth had attacked her, tried to assault her, and that she had no choice but to defend herself.
Started getting really tipsy. He kept telling me to be quiet, like she kept shushing me. It's really scary.
Okay.
But things weren't adding up. The blood evidence contradicted her version of events. Most of the blood was found outside the car, while she had insisted the struggle happened inside. Even more chilling was a detail on her own body. She had the word boy carved into her arm, something she initially implied was done by her attacker. But as investigators looked closer, they realized the truth. She had done it herself. It was all part of her act, another attempt to paint herself as a helpless victim rather than the killer she was. The trial that followed in October 2019 was nothing short of unsettling.
Loss.
McCandless's behavior was strange. almost theatrical. She smiled at times, laughed, and seemed to bask in the attention of the courtroom. Prosecutors proved she planned it to manipulate Mangle, citing 600-plus desperate messages sent to him the day before. The jury rejected her defense, convicting her of first-degree homicide on November 1st, 2019. For the first time, her face fell. She looked genuinely shaken by the verdict, one of the rare moments where her emotions seem real. When sentencing came in February 2020, she was given life in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years. That means she won't see freedom until at least the age of 72.
In the courts, and Alex's family, but most of all, Alex's parents. I want to say how sorry I am that they have lost their son. But sorry doesn't cut it in my mind. That word is not enough and never will be enough for this loss. And I recognize that.
During her sentencing, she finally broke down, offering a tearful apology to Woodworth's family. But to them, and to many watching the case unfold, her words meant nothing. She had spent too long playing a role, shifting her narrative and manipulating those around her. The damage was done. Today, Ezra McCandless remains behind bars at Tushita Correctional Institute in Wisconsin. And while McCandless killed her lover in order to win the heart of another, this next female killer did the exact same thing, but with a different plot twist that will leave you shocked. Case 7, Nikki Sue Insel.
You have taken all of that from us. Your actions have caused a good man his life and have forever fractured my family. And no parent should ever have to bury your child.
On January 2nd, 2020, Nikki Sue Insel, 41, called 911 to report a house fire in Bismarck, North Dakota.
I came out here to check. My husband sent a text message that he didn't come in today, and I've been good 3 days, and so I'm coming here to check. And I walked in, I opened the garage door, and I walked in, and the house is smoky. I can't get in the door.
When authorities arrived, they found her husband, Chad Insel, 42, dead from 2 shotgun wounds. The fire was set intentionally, and investigators quickly uncovered a murder for money plot involving Nikki and her lover, Earl Howard. Prosecutors revealed that Nikki and Howard planned Chad's murder on December 31st, 2019, while Chad was away at a bowling game. Surveillance footage showed the two entering his home. That night, someone using Nikki's credentials disabled the home security cameras. Chad was later shot in the chest and the back of the head, making suicide impossible. To cover up the crime, they placed liquor bottles around him to frame him as a heavy drinker and attempted to start a fire using a propane heater near his bed. When that failed, they returned later to ignite a fire in the basement furnace. The motive was financial. Nikki was set to collect a $600,000 life insurance payout and had taken out a $26,000 renter's insurance policy just days before the murder. Prosecutors argued she intended to use the money to start a new life with Howard in Texas. During the 2022 trial, prosecutors painted Nikki as manipulative and driven by greed. Key evidence included surveillance footage, phone records, and insurance policies. The defense claimed Howard was solely responsible, but no witness supported Nikki's claims. Nikki's changing stories and courtroom behavior played a crucial role in her conviction. She initially denied being present, but later admitted to hearing gunshots while in the car. At one point, she tried to snatch a written confession from an officer's hand, further raising suspicions. On February 7, 2023, Nikki was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
All three, you found guilty for all 3 charges.
Throughout the trial, she showed little remorse, only breaking down during her sentencing. Chad's family condemned her for attempting to tarnish his reputation. Earl Howard pleaded guilty in 2021 and received a 25-year sentence. Nikki remains incarcerated as of March 2025, maintaining her innocence despite overwhelming evidence. And while Nikki Insel meticulously planned her husband's murder for a life insurance payout, this next case takes a more explosive turn. A crime fueled not by greed, but by raw, unrelenting jealousy. Case number 8, Christine Ritchie. On the night of January 28, 2021, inside a home in Marshfield, Massachusetts, A heated argument between Christine Ritchie and her husband, Michael Ritchie, turned deadly. Christine, in a fit of rage, grabbed the knife and stabbed Michael twice, once in the chest, piercing his heart and lung, and once in the back. He collapsed, bleeding heavily. When first responders arrived, they found Christine in a frantic state, hyperventilating and shouting that Michael had attacked her. The knife that ended his life lay nearby. Her story shifted, first self-defense, then a manic episode by Michael. A back wound undermined her claims. The 5-day trial exposed their toxic marriage, scarred by Michael's past affair. Their daughter, Sophia Ritchie, was home that night.
Stairs, could you describe what you saw?
My dad was laying down on the floor.
And what was the very next thing that happened?
She told me to call 911.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
She heard the shouting, then saw her mother standing over Michael's body, telling her to call 911. She later revealed that her father had been a heavy drinker and their arguments were frequent.
At some point, did you hear voices?
Yes.
And where were those voices coming from?
The living room.
And whose voices were they?
My mom, my dad's.
And do you recall hearing yelling?
Yes.
And who did you hear yelling from?
My mom.
But the most damning testimony came from Michael's son, Michael Ritchie Jr. While Christine painted Michael as an abusive alcoholic, his son saw things differently. He described his father as a role model, contradicting Christine's claims and casting doubt on her self-defense argument.
He was my hero. Essentially, he was sort of a role model, wasn't he? He was. Did he tell you about, but it was clear at that point that he was saying that he was an alcoholic.
He didn't say that in the car with me. We talked about the alcoholism when we sat down. All he said was that I saw someone else in the car. He didn't say, I saw someone else because I was drinking. That wasn't.
The prosecution built on this, emphasizing how Christine had never let go of the affair and how her resentment had festered for years. A co-worker of Michael's testified that he had come to work with black eyes and scratches on his neck shortly before his death. Another witness recalled Christine's obsession with Michael's mistress, even driving around looking for her house filled with rage. Christine sat emotionless as the verdict was read on August 2, 2024. Guilty of second-degree murder. She showed no outward reaction, but in that moment, the weight of her crime settled in. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. And if you thought Christine Ritchie's obsession with her husband's past mistakes was chilling, this next case takes a different turn, where a toxic relationship, a history of violence, and one fatal decision changed everything. Case number 9, Shayna Muhammad.
Deliberately killed Mr. Winston after planning and then with the help of others constructed a story of self-defense. And I genuinely wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. I like Mom. I like Daddy. I'll see you tomorrow, baby. Butter in the grinder. Bring
On March 13, 2022, in Wyoming, Michigan, Shayna Muhammad, 21, shot her boyfriend, Quan Andre Winston Jr., in their Taft Avenue home, hitting his arm and head. He was dead when police arrived. Shayna fled with their 11-month-old daughter, Ava, but turned herself in hours later, claiming self-defense. From the very beginning, the case was complicated. 2 months earlier, Quan faced charges for assaulting Shayna, reduced from strangulation to aggravated assault and domestic violence. A no-contact order followed. Yep, they stayed in touch. Her attorney argued she lived in fear, citing his violence. But the prosecution saw things differently. They painted a picture of a woman who had plenty of opportunities to leave, but instead chose to take matters into her own hands.
Asking her, please let me go. And she goes, no, bro.
The fact that she shot Quan in the head was a crucial point for the prosecution. It suggested intent, not self-defense.
Shayna, did you plan for this to happen?
No.
Did you set out to make this happen?
No.
Did you want this to happen?
No.
Has it been difficult to sit here and look at the pictures of him?
Yes.
When the verdict was read, the weight of the courtroom was heavy. Shayna Muhammad was found guilty of open murder and felony firearms offenses. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. With a trembling voice, she addressed her 11-month-old daughter, Ava, who was too young to understand the weight of the moment.
Thank you. Ms. Muhammad, is there anything you would like to say?
I just want to say sorry to my daughter. That's it.
All right, fair enough.
But the most emotional moment came when Quan's mother gave her victim impact statement.
I hope that you never grow up to know what a waste of a human space you are. I pray that
She told Sakina that Ava would grow up without her parents, that the little girl would one day have to wrestle with the reality of what happened.
you're a monster and your heart is wicked. Not only did you take Quan's life, but you took ours. My mom, Quan's mom, myself, Quan's siblings, also his nieces and nephews that deeply.
As the sentence was handed down, life in prison without the possibility of parole, Sakina lowered her head. There were no outbursts, no pleas for mercy, just the cold realization that she would never again be free, that her daughter would grow up knowing her mother only through prison visits. Sakina Muhammad's case was tragic, a toxic relationship, a history of violence, and a fatal decision that left a child without both parents. But what happens when obsession, not fear, is the driving force behind a crime? In the next case, a breakup wasn't just heartbreaking, it was deadly. Case number 10, Shayna Hubers.
I did. Yes, I did. I can't believe I did that.
Some people don't handle breakups well, and then there's Shayna Hubers, a woman who took rejection to a whole new level. On October 12, 2012, 29-year-old attorney Ryan Poston was preparing for a date with Aubrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio. He never made it. Instead, he was shot 6 times by his ex-girlfriend, Shayna Hubers, a woman so obsessed with keeping him that when she realized he was moving on, she made sure he never would. The relationship was toxic. Shayna was obsessive, sending hundreds of messages a day and showing up uninvited. Ryan wanted out, even considering a restraining order. The final straw was his date with Aubrey Bolt. Shayna wasn't just losing him, she was losing him to a beauty queen. That night, Shayna showed up at Ryan's Highland Heights, Kentucky condo. She grabbed his gun and shot him 6 times. The crime scene was brutal. Ryan was shot in the face, chest, and arms. But what made it worse was how Shayna acted afterward. Most people who just killed someone, especially someone they supposedly loved, showed some kind of remorse. Not Shayna. At the police station, she laughed, danced, twirled, and even sang Amazing Grace. And then she dropped a line that would haunt this case forever. I gave him the nose job he always wanted.
I gave him his nose job he wanted.
Yes, she actually said that. And it wasn't the only disturbing thing that come out of her mouth. At one point, she admitted that Ryan was still moaning and twitching on the floor after she shot him. Her response? She fired more shots to put him out of his misery. She even bragged, "I'm so good at acting."
When I first shot him, he let out a really loud noise that sounded like an animal. It was a very animalistic noise. It scared me. It freaked me out.
And because you didn't want to watch him die, you shot him more times to the point where you knew he was dead.
I said those things.
Shayna claimed self-defense, saying Ryan was violent and on drugs, but there was zero evidence, no police reports, no medical records, not even a bruise. Meanwhile, the prosecution had a mountain of proof. Text showed Shayna had been plotting against Ryan, even joking about killing him. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Shayna was sentenced to life in prison.
We, the jury, fixed the defendant, Shayna Hubers' punishment for the offense of murder at life imprisonment.
She remains behind bars, where she continues to file appeals, still claiming she acted in self-defense. But no amount of legal maneuvers can change the facts. She killed Ryan because he was moving on, because he had a date with a beauty queen, because in her mind, if she couldn't have him, no one could. It wasn't a crime of passion, it was a crime of control, and Ryan Poston paid for it with his life. They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and these cases prove just how true that can be. Which of these women's reactions to their insane sentences did you find the most disturbing? Let us know in the comments.